Welcome to the 7th Annual Quit Sugar Summit, where the world's leading professors, scientists, MDs, PhDs, coaches, addiction specialists, and health influencers bring you all the information you need to change your relationship with sugar. Now, here's your speaker. Hey, everybody, it's Mike with the Quit Sugar Summit and sugaraddiction.com. I'm here with Dr. Robert Lustig, the author of the new book, and it's much better when I have a book, but this works too. Metabolical. Okay. This thing is, we were just talking that maybe preach to the choir, but we're going to get it out to people that really need it. Just an amazing expose. I mean, he just brought it all. Big pharma, big government, big food. And it was just amazing, really. I don't even know where to start. But what I'd like to start with, Rob, is if you would, I got a whole list of questions. I read the book, 1.5 times after I skimmed it, but I want to know what you want to get out of it. I want to know what you want, the message you want to get off, and we'll just take off from there. I'll take a couple of notes from that and have my own notes, but I want to know what I got a couple messages that I want to get out that I think you said you wanted to get out, but I want to see what you want to get out in an encapsulated form. Take as long as you want. So tell us about this book for us.
I want to get one thing out of this book.
Yeah.
You can't solve a problem if you don't know what the problem is.
Okay.
It's just that simple. And as a physician, I know this, inherently, because we're trained, to solve the problem after the diagnosis is made. You don't treat until you know what the diagnosis is. And invariably, if you treat without a diagnosis, you're going to end up being wrong. The problem is misdiagnosis. Okay. And there are a whole bunch of doctors who will tell you, you got this wrong, that wrong, the other thing wrong, and give you medicines that will actually make you sicker because they got the diagnosis wrong. Well, the medical profession, the scientific profession, the dietary profession, the dental profession, et cetera, have gotten the diagnosis wrong for the last 50 years. And I had to write this book to basically reorient everybody as to the record. You can't solve a problem if you don't know what the problem is. And for the last 50 years, we have thought the problem is calories. We have thought the problem is saturated fat. We have thought the problem is, everything except what it is. Okay. And what I've realized, I wrote the first book. Actually, let me take it back. There's this mantra that goes on in everyone's heads whenever you talk about food and health, and people say, you are what you eat. You heard that before?
Of course. Ridiculous, right?
Well, it is ridiculous, but so I wrote Fat Chance in 2013 because I knew it was ridiculous, and I wrote that book to espouse a different mantra. You are what you do with what you eat. Okay? That metabolism matters more than calories. But over the last 8 years, after doing even more research and seeing the politics up close and personal, and my colleagues in the Food Documents Library at UCSF, piecing apart what went on inside the industry during this period of time, I've come to the realization back in 2013, I got it wrong too. So okay. I wrote this book to espouse a completely different mantra. You are what they did with what you eat.
Okay.
That it's the food processing that actually makes the difference. And that it's not what's in the food, it's what's been done to the food. And it's not what's on the label, it's what has happened to the food that's not on the label that is the real problem. And like I said, you can't solve a problem if you don't know what the problem is. Well, if it's not on the label and you don't know what's been done to the food, how are you supposed to solve it?
Right.
And so that's why I wrote this book, is to get that knowledge, that information into people's hands in a way that makes sense and that my, quote, colleagues, unquote, in the science and dietary and nutrition and, you know, medical professions, you know, won't be able to tear apart because it's, you know, it's not, it's too strong. It's built on too great a foundation, which is why there's so much science in the book and why there are 1,054 references. This really needs to be a medical textbook. This book needs to be, you know, a book that medical students use.
Right. I mean, you're so courageous in all of the people that you, I don't want to say attack, but you at least shine light on, right? You shine, I mean, it's like,
Sunlight is the best disinfectant.
yeah. And are they, is there any pushback yet? It's early, I know, it just came out, but.
You know, I haven't seen any. I'm kind of surprised. I would have thought that, you know, all the big guns would have been, you know, armed at the ready and that the salvos would have come fast and furious. Thus far, and, you know, HarperCollins and I have been scanning the blogosphere looking for the, you know, for the
Centers.
yeah. And I don't see it yet. I also, unfortunately, don't see a lot of Amazon reviews. So out there, if you've read the book, you know, post a review, tell us what you think of it, because that's the only way to generate more foot traffic.
Right. I agree. Yeah. I mean, you talk about you say that this is heresy and that there will be, or you're going to piss somebody off, I think is your quote.
Oh, you know, look, I've been pissing people off my entire life.
I love it.
I started with my mother, and now, you know, just, you know, it just goes from there.
Right. So, I mean, I got a litany of questions. I mean, I was just like blown away. Oh, one thing I wanted to ask you, you're director of worldwide media, Wolfram. I wanted a couple things. Maybe we could do them at the end. Perfect, the sugar matrix, and the sugar added sugar repository. Maybe we can do those at the end. Yeah, we'll mention those. That was, I didn't want to leave that out.
Yeah,
so
they'll make sense at the end.
Yeah. So there were 6 words, and I really like this. And, you know, I think personally, mantras of this type, if we can get them, that's why every time I interview, I have you try and get me a little sound bite, or I try and get sound bites. But these 6 words, it's actually separated into two different things: protect the liver and feed the gut. Number 2, 1 and 2. Can you expound on that a little bit? Because I think people, 50 years of $72 billion a year in diet culture of eat less and exercise more has just brainwashed people. And we need our own mantras. And I think this is a good one.
Well, let's put it this way. It's short and it's accurate.
Right.
And the empiric data actually, you know, fit it completely, which is why, you know, it resonates with people. So look, you know, what is healthy? No one knows. No one's. Now, the FDA has a definition for healthy. It's true. And the definition is useless. It's something on the order of low in saturated fat and has vitamin D and potassium. That's what makes something healthy. It's like, what? Okay. The USDA does not define healthy, and that's on purpose, because if they define healthy, then all the stuff that you see in the store that advertises that it's healthy on the front of package couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. So they haven't even bothered to define healthy. So the question is, what is healthy? You know, like Potter Stewart, I know it when I see it. Well, no, you don't, because, you know, you buy this crap that says it's healthy. So I needed to come up with a very specific definition that actually makes sense, scientific, physiologic, and political sense. And the answer is 6 words, 2 clauses, and they work. Protect the liver, feed the gut. Okay. So protect the liver from what? Turns out you got to protect the liver from a bunch of things. The most important thing, and the thing that's pretty much ubiquitous across, you know, our population, is the tsunami of mono and disaccharides that are hitting the liver from sugar and refined carbohydrate. Right? That's, you know, what happens is the liver has a limited capacity to extract and metabolize those. And when you overwhelm the liver's ability to do that, when you overwhelm the glucose transporters and the Krebs cycle, the liver has no choice but to take the excess and turn it into liver fat. And this is why 45% of the adult American population of the US now has non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. This was a disease never seen before 1980. If you had fatty liver disease before 1980, you were an alcoholic, period. And now 45% of the adult American population have it. You want to talk pandemics? That's the pandemic. COVID-19, eat your heart out. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is the pandemic of the late 20th and early 21st century. All right? Affects way more people than COVID-19 will. And it turns out when your liver gets fatty, when you have fatty liver, your liver can't do its job right. And so the pancreas, recognizing this, has to make extra insulin in order to make the liver do its job. Do you ever wonder, I mean, I don't know how much anatomy you know, Mike, but we doctors, we know some anatomy, because we had to take anatomy lab and put up cadavers and stuff.
I hope so.
All right. Normally in the body, the blood goes like so: heart, aorta, artery, arteriole, organ, venule, vein, inferior vena cava, heart. Okay. The blood passes through one organ and comes back. There are two places in the body where it goes like this: aorta, heart, aorta, artery, arteriole, organ 1, vein 1, organ 2, vein 2, inferior vena cava, heart.
Got it.
The blood goes through 2 organs to get back instead of 1. Now, one of those places is hypothalamus pituitary. I'm a hypothalamus doctor. I do this for a living.
Right.
We know why this is. And the other one is pancreas liver. So why does the pancreatic vein drain into the portal vein to go to the liver? Why doesn't it drain back into the inferior vena cava like everybody else, like everything else? Answer: because the liver is the primary target of insulin action. So the liver is waiting for that insulin signal as to tell it what to do. And if the liver is sick, the pancreas has to make extra insulin to make the liver do its job. Well, that raises insulin levels all over the body to make the liver do its job. And that extra insulin is the driver of weight gain, and it's the driver of all sorts of chronic metabolic disease. It's the driver of vascular smooth muscle proliferation, like, for instance, your coronary arteries, and that sets you up for heart attack. And it's also the driver of breast tissue cells in terms of risk for breast cancer. And it's the driver of what goes on in your kidney to lead to chronic renal failure, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In other words, you got to get the insulin down. And the only way to get the insulin down is to make the liver work better. And the only way to make the liver work better is to get rid of the liver fat. And the only way to get rid of the liver fat is to protect the liver.
Does it heal up okay if you quit it? Or
Sorry,
is the scarring, does it heal up okay?
Yeah, so there are 3 stages.
Yeah.
There's fatty liver, called steatosis.
Right.
There's fatty liver plus inflammation, which is called non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. And then there's fatty liver with fibrosis, which is cirrhosis.
Yeah.
Now, if you're at steatosis, stage 1, you can absolutely reverse it.
Okay.
Once you start getting inflammation, and once you start getting some scarring, you cannot fix that. That's unfixable. Then you're doomed for life. And it's just a question of how bad is it going to get and how quick are you going to die, or would you die of something else first? By the time you get to cirrhosis, then you need a liver transplant or you are dead. So the goal is get the fat out of the liver before the inflammation comes. Okay. Now, it's true, most of the people with fatty liver disease are in stage 1. They just have steatosis. They can reverse it.
Good.
But the only way to reverse it is to stop the process that makes it.
Right.
And what is the substrate that makes it?
Processed food.
Sugar,
Straight sugar.
straight sugar. But, you know, the sugar's hiding in the processed food.
Right. Is it the fructose or high levels of glucose? Which?
So the high levels of glucose don't make the fat.
Okay.
The fructose makes the fat. The high levels of glucose are still bad.
Yeah.
Because the high levels of glucose go, you know, circulate in the bloodstream, raise your serum glucose, and your beta cells respond to that. So that increases the insulin release.
Right.
But there's a difference between insulin release and insulin resistance.
Okay.
Insulin release is at the pancreas, insulin resistance is at the liver. They both contribute. They're
Right.
both important. But just remember, sugar is both. It's glucose and fructose.
Right.
So you get insulin release and insulin resistance.
Okay.
So sugar is the really bad guy in the story.
Right.
For that reason.
Okay.
So you got to clear the liver fat. And until you clear the liver fat, you're at risk.
Okay. Gotcha.
And so there are a couple of ways to clear the liver fat. One is don't eat the sugar. Number two is eat the food with inherent fiber, because that protects the liver. It forms this gel on the inside of the intestine that I've talked about many times that
Sure.
prevents the early absorption from the gut into the bloodstream, that thus protecting the liver. Another way you can protect the liver is exercise, because exercise will cause that liver to metabolize some of that fat first.
Okay.
So all of these things help. In addition, you want to protect the liver from branched chain amino acids. Branched chain amino acids are leucine, isoleucine, valine, and they are what's in corn-fed beef, chicken, and fish. Okay, so there's processed food again.
Right.
In addition, you want to protect the liver from glyphosate, which is, you know, Roundup. You want to protect the liver from iron, which can cause hemochromatosis. You want to protect the liver from other heavy metals like arsenic, okay, which we now know is in baby food.
And
Okay,
rice.
so there's a lot of stuff to protect the liver from.
Right.
And then the other thing is feed the gut. Well, feed the gut what? Well, what is I mean, remember, you've got 10 trillion cells in your body. You got 100 trillion bacteria in your intestine. Okay, they outnumber you 10 to 1. They got to eat something. The question is, what do they eat? They eat what you eat. The question is, how much did you get versus how much did they get? All right. And what they particularly like to eat is fiber.
Okay.
Soluble and insoluble. And real food has both.
Right.
Now, if you don't feed your gut will feed on you. Those bacteria get angry, starved.
Right.
They mount a rebellion. And what they do is they chew the mucin layer right off your intestinal epithelial cells, denuding the inside of your intestine. And now the bacteria are actually apposed right on top of the intestinal epithelial cells, no barrier. And that can cause inflammation. It can cause leaky gut. It can cause the breakdown of the tight junctions that hold the intestine together. Now you've got lipopolysaccharides and cytokines and even full bacteria making their way from the intestinal lumen into the bloodstream. And now you've got systemic inflammation. And now you've got full-fledged metabolic syndrome. And you also have now risk for food allergy and for irritable bowel syndrome and inflammatory bowel disease. And if you really get bad, you can even cause, you know, depression and even psychosis.
Right. And
So,
too much fructose in the digestive system is bad too, right?
right, absolutely. So fructose has to be absorbed through the intestinal lining and then end up in the liver. In the process of doing that, it doesn't just go straight through, it gets phosphorylated. And the phosphorylation comes from ATP. So the ATP goes to ADP, okay? And that's reducing the amount of energy within the intestinal epithelial cell. Those tight junctions are ATP dependent. And so if you lose ATP, they can become less tight. And that might be one of the reasons for leaky gut. The bottom line is, you know, you don't want to overload your system with all this stuff.
Yeah.
So you want to feed the gut fiber. You don't want to feed it fructose.
What do you think the worst thing is for leaky gut? I think the description I heard that I liked the most, it's supposed to be like a toilet paper roll. It absorbs through. There's not supposed to be any particles getting in the bloodstream, right? So
Right.
what like grains I've heard are really bad, tear up your system. What is something that besides the fructose and stuff that makes
Leaky gut,
permeability? Yeah, like that.
alcohol.
Oh, yeah.
It's a
Right.
solvent. Emulsifiers. They're a
Right.
solvent. They're detergents.
Right.
Okay. They make leaky gut.
Okay. I got you.
That's
But
processed food.
yeah. Okay. Hey, have you ever heard, this is totally off the wall, but have you ever heard the people where they ingest sugar and that literally turns to alcohol in their body? You've heard this?
Yes, I have heard that.
And is it
Heard that.
real?
Yeah, it's called auto brewing syndrome,
Okay.
and there are case reports
Right.
where they've actually shown that it's true. It's very rare. Obviously, you have a very different microbiome
Yeah.
because your gut is basically taking the sugar and turning it into alcohol. Normally, bacteria, when they eat sugar, they turn it into lactate, lactic acid. But there's no reason that that what's in your gut couldn't turn it into alcohol. After
Sure.
all, that's what yeast do.
Yeah. No, I've heard people blow breathalyzers after they didn't need alcohol, drink alcohol and
Right.
just brewed in their gut, whatever.
It's a rare phenomenon, but
Right.
documented. Yeah, it's real.
Cool.
Auto brewing syndrome.
Let's talk calories. You know my love of little sound bites that I can pull out of here and the ways that we can make movements and get things moving here. But there's behind it with you a lot of history, a lot of science and 40 years of research working up to it.
Oh, I'm the science guy. All right.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
everything I say I can back up.
Right. So here's the thing that I love this, and they go together. Let's talk calories, and that not all calories are created equal, but the one I like the most is you said this quote, "I want this book to kill the calorie."
Absolutely.
So how, like,
Gotta
wrap that up in a package of 5 or 10 minutes so that the folks can really grab it. I know it's hard, but best you can.
Well, all right. So look, the calorie is a unit of physics.
Right.
It's a measure of heat,
Right.
right? How a calorie is that unit of energy that can raise 1 gram of water 1 degree centigrade. Okay, that's a calorie.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you could measure the heat made by your stove, or your the burners on your stove in calories if you wanted. You can measure it in BTUs, you can measure it in joules, you can measure it in calories. Ultimately, they all have equivalency. All right. The point is that it is true on a physics standpoint that a calorie is a calorie, because it is that unit of energy that will raise 1 degree of 1 gram of water 1 degree centigrade. So in that respect, it's true. However, it has nothing to do with biochemistry. So where do you measure calories? You measure them here at your mouth, right? You measure them here. If you consumed them, then you consume so many calories. That's assuming they're for you. 30% of what you eat is not for you. It's for your bacteria. You know how when pregnant women, they always say, you're eating for 2? Okay, well, we're always eating for 100 trillion.
Right.
Okay, every day. And they take about somewhere between 25 and 35% of what we eat. On average, about 30. All right. You want them to take more because that means you get to eat more and it doesn't register. So a calorie is not a calorie because if it went to the intestinal bacteria, that calorie wasn't for you. Mm-hmm. It was for your 100 trillion, but you're measuring it at your mouth. So you said it's for you, but it's not. Right. So that's one reason a calorie is not a calorie, because if it's not for you, why are you measuring it?
Right. Exactly.
That's one reason. Right. Second reason. Almonds. You like almonds?
I do.
I love almonds. Almonds are great. Okay. Almonds are big winners. Okay. You eat 160 calories in almonds. How many of those calories do you absorb?
I have no idea.
About 130.
Okay.
Okay. You ate 160, you absorbed 130. Where'd the other 30 go? The bacteria chewed them up.
Sure.
Okay. So you were feeding your bacteria. So you consumed 160, but you only absorbed 130. So a calorie is not a calorie, because if it came with fiber, you didn't get it.
Right.
Your bacteria did.
Okay.
All right. Protein. Now, you can do two things with protein. You can either chop it up into amino acids, and those amino acids can then build new proteins inside your body, or you can take each of those amino acids and burn it for energy. All right, so let's take the amino acids that are burned for energy. Okay, so you eat a steak, and those, and you're not you're not a bodybuilder, so they're not going to new muscle or anything. So what happens to the amino acids in that steak? They go to your liver, and the liver has to take the amino group off to become an organic acid. And then that organic acid can then be converted into something that can enter the Krebs cycle, the citric acid cycle in the liver, and burn it for energy to create ATP. Now, it turns out that in order to be able to do that, in order to be able to turn an amino acid into energy, in order to take that amino group off, you have to add energy to get the energy out. You have to invest energy to recoup energy.
Okay.
The net is smaller than if you did that with a carbohydrate.
Okay.
You had to invest energy. So a calorie is not a calorie, because even though the calories that come out of it might be the same, you had to invest energy into it. Chester, cut it out.
He's all right.
Silly dog. He hears my wife out there.
There you go.
Okay, so protein is different from carbohydrate, even though they're both 4 calories per gram, in terms of burning it in a bomb calorimeter, but they're really not the same. So a calorie is not a calorie.
Right.
Fat. Okay, so over here we have omega-3s, heart healthy, anti-inflammatory, anti-Alzheimer's, will save your life. Single best thing you can put in your body, right? 9 calories per gram. Over here, we have trans fats, the devil incarnate, consumable poison. Okay, right. Seriously, nothing worse that you can put in your body than this. Your body cannot metabolize it correctly. Okay, it lines your arteries and liver, and basically kills you. Also 9 calories per gram. They're both 9 calories per gram. One will save your life, one will kill you. Because a calorie is not a calorie.
Right.
In fact, those have nothing to do with the calories. And then finally, fructose and glucose. So glucose is the energy of life. Every cell on the planet burns glucose for energy. Glucose is so important that if you don't consume it, your body makes it. Process called gluconeogenesis.
Right.
So amino acids can turn into glucose. Glycerol from esterified fatty acids can turn into glucose. All right? But you don't have to consume it. The Inuit, they didn't have any carbohydrate. They didn't have any place to grow a carbohydrate. They had whale blubber. Right? They still had a certain glucose level because their liver would turn the fat into glucose to maintain a certain glucose level.
Right.
All right. Fructose, on the other hand, is completely vestigial. There's no need for it. There's no biochemical in the reaction in the body that requires it.
Right.
It's completely vestigial for all eukaryotic life. It is a holdover from our prokaryotic plant ancestors, before we split off the evolutionary tree.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, but we love it, and it's addictive.
But can we drill into that? I've quoted you 100 times saying that I asked you once that is fructose addictive? Is it a psychoactive addictive substance? And you said, you didn't let me finish. You said yes.
Yes.
So can we,
It's still yes.
can we like, you know, my background, and I'm moving the recovery world into the sugar world because this is in my world a true substance use disorder. And I think it comes down to the fructose that we aren't supposed to have maybe once a year. Our, like Michael Moss says, our bodies have run in 10 million years of evolution have run into the last 50 years. And we, you know, the nucleus accumbens, dopamine, serotonin, they can't handle it. It's just too much.
Well, I don't know if that's why,
Yeah.
but I can't tell you that that's the reason, but it is true that any substance or behavior that activates the nucleus accumbens, the reward center of the brain, any substance or behavior that activates dopamine is in the extreme addictive.
And does fructose do that?
And fructose absolutely does that.
Okay.
Now there are substances that are, shall we say, more readily addictive, like for instance, cocaine, heroin, nicotine.
Yeah.
There are other substances that are maybe addictive, like alcohol. So like for 40% of Americans are teetotalers, don't touch the stuff.
Right.
40% are social drinkers, can pick up a bottle of beer, put it back down, no big deal.
Yep.
Okay. But 20% have a problem. 10% are binge drinkers, 10% are hardcore alcoholics.
Okay.
That's what the data show. And by the way, that number's going up.
Right.
Especially during COVID.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So not everybody is addicted to alcohol, but enough people are that it's a public health problem. No one will argue that.
Right.
And also no one will argue that alcohol is food. It's got 7 calories per gram, but no one will argue that alcohol is food. No one will argue that alcohol is nutrition. Well, turns out sugar is not a food. Sugar is not nutrition because there's no biochemical reaction in the body that requires it. Yes, it's energy just like alcohol, but you don't need it.
Right.
You would function perfectly fine without it. There are people with the disorder hereditary fructose intolerance. They are missing an enzyme in their liver called aldolase B, which is necessary to metabolize fructose. If you're missing this enzyme, when you're age 6 months and your parents give you the first taste of juice or cake or anything, your blood glucose goes down to 5. You have a seizure. You end up in the intensive care unit. You hope you don't die. You hope you don't fry your brain. Some do. Okay, you get a liver biopsy to figure out how come your blood glucose was 5. And they figure out finally that you are missing this enzyme. You have hereditary fructose intolerance. And the only way you will survive the rest of your life is to be on a completely, totally, 100% sugar-free diet for the rest of your life. And you know what? If you survive that neonatal period, you will be the healthiest person on the planet because you did not consume fructose.
Right. Right. Love it.
So you do not need fructose to live.
Right.
Because there's no biochemical reaction that requires it.
Right.
So it just so happens that fructose stimulates that nucleus accumbens. And so in the extreme, fructose is addictive. So
and you're the one that taught me this dose makes the poison. And,
Yep.
we're pounding 21 teaspoons a day average, Coke's 12. I mean, and we're like, what's somebody that's doing a lot, 40, 30, 40, 50 teaspoons of sugar a day.
That's
and
right.
they've been doing it since they were a child. Their nucleus accumbens, dopamine receptor, everything's fried up there. They can't really make cognitive decisions.
Well, so
I think,
so here's the thing about dopamine.
Yeah.
Dopamine is an excitatory neurotransmitter.
Okay.
When dopamine binds to its receptor, it excites the next neuron. Now, neurons like to be excited. That's why they have receptors in the first place. But neurons like to be tickled, not bludgeoned. Okay?
Yeah.
Chronic overstimulation of any neuron leads to neuronal cell death. And we know this because, like, as a pediatrician, I take care of patients kids with status epilepticus, chronic nonstop seizures that wouldn't stop.
Yeah.
And the longer they went on, the more neurons they lost and the more developmentally delayed they would be afterward.
Okay.
So there's an imperative for the doctor to stop the seizure. So we give them all sorts of medicines, and sometimes we even have to put them into a pentobarbital coma to stop the seizures. We have to give them, weird drugs like paraldehyde to stop the seizures in order to preserve brain function. Because neural excitation causes neuronal cell death. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So anything that causes increased release of dopamine chronically is a potential risk for causing neuronal cell death. Like, for instance, cocaine. Like, for instance, other adrenergic, like angel dust, things like that. Okay?
Yeah.
So what happens is, think of it this way. You have a battery, okay, a 200-volt battery, okay? And the battery has two electrodes, right? Positive, negative. All right? And you have two pieces of wire, copper wire, same copper, same length, same width, exactly the same wire. Except one of the wires has an insulation and the other one is bare. Okay? Now you put either wire across the electrodes of the battery. Which wire is going to fry first? the bare wire or the insulated wire?
Right, the bare wire.
The bare wire. Why?
It's too much.
Ohm's law.
Oh, okay.
Ohm's law. V equals IR, or I equals V over R. The amperage is equal to the voltage over the resistance. The insulation is the resistance. So what happens is the voltage stays the same because it's 200 volts, but the resistance goes up because of the insulation. That means the amperage goes down, which means the wire won't fry. But the bare wire, it doesn't have the resistance. So the amperage is higher. And so it goes, and it's all,
So you're telling us we're frying our brains, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
The old, this is your brain on drugs kind of thing. This is your brain on
sugar. Yes.
Right.
There you go.
Unbelievable. So, I mean, well, I'll get to that in a second, but there's a couple more things I really want to dive into before we have to let you go. But one thing I really liked about the book is something you talk about, the fake war. The fake war. And I am just so over this crap. First of all, people want to, they want to have a defined food plan when they attempt this. And I'm not sure, you can't just say whole food, right? They want a keto plan, or they want a vegan plan, or they want a paleo plan, or they want vegetarian, whatever. They want something in the middle.
Right.
So, and the people are like literally warring against each other.
Which makes no sense to me whatsoever.
Right. So to go tell the folks what you mean by that.
So every diet that works, and by the way, I'm not anti-keto, I'm not anti-vegan, I'm pro-keto, I'm pro-vegan.
Me too.
I'm pro-paleo, I'm pro a lot of things.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have a diet to sell you.
Right. Me either.
But every diet that works is real food. In fact, the only diet that doesn't work is processed food. Right. That's the diet that kills. Okay, but every other diet works. Now, it is true that some diets will work better for some people and other diets will work better for other people. I don't argue that. And there are ways to figure out who you are based on your glucose tolerance test with insulin levels, if you could do that, and some other biomarkers, which, by the way, are in chapter 9 of the book. So you can diagnose yourself, so you know what works best for you. Right. But the point is that the keto diet, when it works, it's all real food. Right. The problem is with the keto diet is staying on it, because you have to be fastidious. You have to keep that insulin super low all the time. Right. So as soon as you go off the ranch, as soon as you have that halo top, ice cream, all of a sudden your insulin, shoots up. And it says only 6 grams of carbohydrate per serving. Well, that's a whole lot better than 32 grams of carbohydrate in regular ice cream. But don't you think that 6 grams of carbohydrate is going to suppress your insulin? I mean, don't you think it's going to stimulate your insulin? And if you stimulate your insulin, don't you think it's going to suppress your ketogenesis? So you won't be on the keto diet anymore. So if you're going to do the keto diet, which is fine, and I'm not against it, you just have to really be fastidious about it. And vegan, well, vegan's okay too. I'm not against vegan. I'm for it. Okay, except for one thing. Coke, Doritos, and Oreos are vegan.
Don't they have to eat vegans have to eat a lot of grains and stuff that turns to sugar, right?
Well, so if they're eating a lot of refined carbohydrate, they're not doing themselves any favors.
Right.
So, you have to basically eat the stuff with fiber, which is basically the Ornish diet. That's essentially what that is. Okay. And, Ornish showed very nicely that he can reverse cardiovascular lesions. Okay, fine. And I'm not against that.
Right.
Again, you have to be fastidious. You have to really, know what you're doing, and you can't eat processed food.
Right.
So the fact of the matter is that keto and vegan are choices, and that's fine. Okay, but it's not like one's better than the other. It's and the point is that they're really on the same side, because they're really on the real food side, and the enemy is not each other. The enemy is the processed food.
And both of them have too many processed food snacks, and I think vegans are a little worse, but I think the keto folks and keto pancakes and keto, you can't. It's just not relevant. It's not real food.
Work. Ain't gonna work. Ain't gonna work.
Right. So
this is the problem.
Another thing that really tripped my trigger anyway, and I see it all the time out there, and I get a lot of pushback and blowback on this, is that, and I think your friend, I make a mess of his name, Dr. Asim Matal, he's in Great Britain.
Asim Malhotra.
Asim Malhotra. So he posted a thing on Instagram about your a page about the dietitians, right? Yeah. This is a crazy story, and Belinda Fettke's doing a lot of work on this, and the story of how they came through the Harvey Kellogg thing. Right. But at the end of the day, I don't want to say, let me say, you could fix it if you want, but they're owned in essence by the big food companies, or their funding comes from there.
90% of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics operating budget comes from the big food companies.
Right.
So they're not going to bite the hand that feeds them.
Right. And they're seemingly, how should I say this? They're controlling the schools, the prisons, and the hospitals. And I don't know. It seems like they're a disgrace a little bit. I don't know. It's a terrible thing to say.
The point is that dietitians believe in calories, and calories are math.
Right.
This is about science. This is not about math.
Yeah.
All right. And the calorie is the problem. I'm trying to kill the calorie.
Right.
All right. So basically, I have to show dietitians where they've gone off the rails.
And how do we do that? How do we kill the calorie? What is one thing you told me a while back is subsidizing water. We don't have to get into that now, but one of the things that, you have these evil plot skit, you have these things that you're cooking up. So share us, how do we kill the calorie?
Well, the calorie is
as a concept,
right? Right. Well, I will tell you that it is very hard to kill it from the top down.
Yeah.
The way to kill the calorie is from the bottom up.
Okay.
Dogma is dogma. And, I believe in that there's only one dogma, that there is no dogma. Mm-hmm. That's the dogma. There is no dogma. Okay. Whatever we knew 10 years ago is already wrong today. And whatever we know today will be wrong 10 years from now.
Right.
Now, we've learned that time and time and time again. All right. But that's what research is for overturning the previous generation's dogma. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's why we do research, is to get at the right answer. Okay. And you need science in order to be able to do that. Well, the science on calories is in. All right. But dogmas die hard because, dogmas involve zealotry. Dogmas involve, blind faith. So the only way to get rid of dogma is to teach the next generation what the real story is. And then the dogma will die out with the dinosaurs.
And that happens as
That
like
happens,
a movement?
that happens through a movement that educates the young people.
Okay.
And that's my job. And that's why I wrote the book.
Right. Gotcha.
So, people always ask me, who are your detractors? It's the 4 Ds.
Okay.
Right? It's the dinosaurs, the deniers, the dilettantes, and the drug addicts. Okay, the 4 Ds. All right, the dinosaurs, the people who can't learn something new.
Right.
All right, the deniers, the people who basically, can, are in, beholden, to these outdated notions because there's something in it for them. Like a lot of the talking heads on PBS. The dilettantes, like for instance, the people who work for the food industry.
Right.
Okay. And finally, the drug addicts who basically say, don't take my sugar away from me, man. I need it.
Right.
Okay.
So this is a great segue to, I think, you said that the first book and you've evolved to the point where you didn't talk a lot about addiction. In this book, you did. You really did. And I'm personally, I'm excited about it because, my quote unquote cure, the way that I've helped people get off it, thousands of them now, get off this stuff is to transpose harm reduction and peer recovery and these things into the system of getting off of sugar. And it wasn't until they accepted it that they actually got better. So I want to read something from the book. We need to adopt the addiction paradigm into our medical treatment plans and laws to nudge people towards healthy decisions. Every substance or behavior of abuse has required both personal intervention, i.e. rehab, and societal intervention, i.e. laws. One does not work without the other. We have both for alcohol and for tobacco and alcohol. And then it goes on, but tell me, like, how far you've come on that. I know you noticed you gave Joan Iflin a credit in the acknowledgments, and so this is seemingly for me, in listening to you for years, an evolution in your thought process, or maybe you've known about it all the time. So tell me what your thoughts are on that.
Well, basically, initially, I thought the problem was purely endocrine and metabolic. I thought the problem was leptin.
Okay.
Okay. I said, well, if your leptin worked right, you wouldn't be obese and it would take care of the obesity. And that's true. But what I didn't know at the time was that leptin extinguished reward. So it turns out there is a hedonic component to how even leptin works. So leptin turns dopamine off. But if you're leptin resistant, then your dopamine stays high. So the addiction piece was there. I just didn't know about it early.
Okay.
So I've gradually gravitated into the addiction world.
Okay.
And, I'm a neuroscientist, I study, how the brain works.
Right.
And, this is, addiction is, a limbic system dysfunction, because of, how dopamine works on its receptors. So I was, primed to understand this, and, the data kept coming in, and we've done some of it here at UCSF. My colleague, Dr. Ashley Mason, showed with an naltrexone probe, which is an opiate antagonist, just how strong the opioidergic system is around food addiction, and very specifically sugar addiction. And what we've realized is that, the group over in Europe called Neurofast, they're a political action group that basically does not believe in food addiction. They believe in eating addiction. They believe
Right.
it's purely behavioral. But if it's purely behavioral, that means the food industry doesn't have to do anything different. So it basically gives the food industry a carte blanche to keep doing whatever they're doing.
I forget, are they funded by the food industry?
Well, they say they're not, but I'm not sure of that.
Okay.
Okay, on their website they say not, but there are a lot of people who are in that group that have been sponsored by Nestle, et cetera. But I don't know about the group itself.
I got you. Okay.
So I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But the point is that it matters because food addiction and eating addiction are not just semantic differences. Okay, it really goes to philosophy of culpability and who's right and who's wrong. Point is, we now have the data to demonstrate that sugar is addictive, but sugar is a food, right? Well, actually, no, it's not. In the same way alcohol is not a food, sugar is not a food. It's a food additive. And so in the chapter on addiction, I basically lay out the logical argument that would be a legal argument, that could be used in a court of law to basically prove, almost a geometric proof, a QED, that in fact, sugar is not a food. It has calories, but those calories are irrelevant. Those calories are vestigial, and there's no biochemical reaction that requires it, and it's addictive.
Right.
So it is true that food is not addictive, but food additives certainly can be. I'll give you another food additive that's addictive, caffeine.
Yeah, that's already in the DSM, right? Caffeine.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. Well, I think sugar belongs right there with caffeine. And then Neurofast in the UK can be right, and we can be right also.
Well, how do you, this is really, you're getting to the crux of my work in trying to tell people how to, it's not food addiction, it's sugar addiction, or it's fructose addiction, or whatever you want to call it. It's
right.
I call it a substance use disorder. I call it a powder addiction. If there's nothing been reduced to a powder, it's not going to be likely addictive, right?
So in my book, Hacking of the American Mind, I had a whole chapter called The Purification of Addiction.
Yeah.
So opium used to be medicinal, but
right, exactly.
Heroin is a drug. All
Cocaine
right?
used to be a
coca leaves. Right, coca leaves were medicinal, but cocaine's a drug.
right.
and on and on. Okay.
Right.
When you concentrate something and purify something, you actually change its properties.
Right. So, okay, I think I saw your wife there. We're coming up on an hour. I don't want to keep you any longer than you need to. I know whatever you're on a book tour that's probably exhausting. You're probably zoomed right out.
I'm zoomed. I've got big time
Zoom fatigue, right? So I wanted to ask one last question, and it's like you said one time, and I loved it, that you think you're going to need an ID and be 18 years old to purchase sugar eventually in this society. Is that still hold? And do you believe like 50 years from now they're going to say, they used to give sugar to kids, right? Like, right. Is it going to be that? Is it going to evolve that way? Is it going to go that way?
So I think that we could card kids for Coke. Yeah. All right. If a parent wants a kid to have a Coke, let them buy it for them.
Sure.
So I think that's fine. So I wouldn't necessarily throw the parent in jail for buying the kid the Coke.
Yeah.
Because right now, if the parent buys the kid a beer, they throw the parent in jail.
Right.
All right. But I do think that the kid can't just walk into the convenience store and get a Coke on the way to school or the way back from school, and it's where the parents don't know what they're doing.
Right.
So
a lot more than a Coke too.
Well, sometimes, yeah, right. The candy bar and the potato chips and whatever else. That's right. And unfortunately, there's a convenience store within 500 feet of every school in the United States.
Right.
And also every school lunchroom is, that's the largest fast food franchise in the world is the American school. So we have a lot of work to do.
I got a quick question. You talk about natural flavorings. This is for me personally. Do you think in the natural flavor under that wire, under that FDA thing, that they could have fructose in those?
No, the flavorings don't.
No.
Okay, but some of the flavorings don't taste very good, so you have to add sugar to basically, mask the flavor.
Right.
So that's true.
Well, cool. What last word, final words you want to say about this book, about getting it out, getting it into what hands, whatever you want to wrap this up with, because you've been very generous with your time and I appreciate that.
No, my pleasure. Basically, it's from the book. It's actually the first sentence of the first chapter.
Okay.
All right. You got a wasp buzzing around your attic.
Okay.
What do you do? What do you do?
Yeah.
Do you kill the wasp?
Right.
Or you destroy the wasp's nest?
No.
Okay. You have to work upstream of a problem to solve a problem.
Okay.
Working downstream only solves the result. It doesn't solve the problem. The problem's still there.
Right.
And that's what we've been doing in modern medicine for the last 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is the wasps have now come home to roost. We have to work upstream. We have to deal with root cause. Mm-hmm. If you want, you can call it functional medicine. I'm not a functional medicine doctor, but it's a functional medicine precept to address root cause. Mm-hmm. Here in America, we don't do that because that's hard, because it actually requires a little brain power. Okay. And sometimes it requires even a little faith on the part of the patient, since they may not be able to see that what the root cause is. Basically, root cause means systems biology. Okay. This is a systems biology problem. We have a healthcare epidemic, we have a personal health epidemic, we have an opioid epidemic, and we also have an environmental crisis. The Lancet called this not pandemic, they called it a syndemic of all of these things. All right. Do you think these things are occurring in vacuums of each other? It's one problem. It's one big problem. And I would pose that the thing that's beneath all of these is our food supply. And that's the point I try to make in the book.
Well, this is a good segue, and you don't have to do it, but Wolfram will probably kill us if we don't mention Perfect a little bit and the other things there. So, I don't want to leave that out.
So I'm involved in several methods for trying to undo the damage in different ways.
Yeah.
One thing we've done, along with my colleague Wolfram and also a computer scientist named Andreas Kornstadt from Germany, is we've created a platform, a database for being able to know what's in all your food. Okay, because right now on the label, you can't figure out what's in your food, because what's in your food and what's been done to your food are two different things. And so Perfect takes all of this into account. And we are now actually using Perfect to help an international food conglomerate, which will remain nameless, re-engineer their entire portfolio to be healthy.
Nice.
So Perfect is an exciting project.
Cool.
In addition, I'm working with a startup called Fugal. And Fugal, it's a combination of food and frugal. What it is it's a digital platform that ties together 4 stakeholders: the patient, the doctor, the grocery store, and the insurance company. The insurance company would be very happy to pay for food if they knew that the food was actually reversing disease, because then they wouldn't have to pay for medicine, because the food is 1/10 the price of the medicine, and they get to keep the difference. The grocery store would be happy because then they sell all the loss leaders on the outside of the store, okay, which normally they're taking a loss on. And so they'd actually make a profit too. The doctor would do better because he wouldn't have to spend so much time taking care of disease and could see more patients and make more money by seeing more patients, and wouldn't have to, knock his head against the wall, all day about all his patients who are getting worse. And of course, the patient gets better because they get their food for free and they get better.
Nice.
It's a win-win-win-win for everyone.
Nice. Very cool.
Called Fugal.
Right. And the last one, the added sugar repository.
Oh, okay. That's part of Perfect. So basically we are constructing a computerized matrix database of every single sugar or sugar substitute or sugar substance of any sort anywhere in the world, so that the food industry can't get away with murder.
And you can run the UPC code right on your phone.
Exactly.
Yeah,
right.
that's so cool, man. That's
exactly
so cool.
Right.
All right, everybody. Metabolical. Pick it up at wherever books are sold. And I can't even tell the show. And
That's it.
and no, make sure it's good. You can see it. But Rob, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Taking your time.
My pleasure, Mike. Anytime.
And we'll talk real soon, and say hello to your wife. And the dog was really good, by the way. Did a good job.
He parked right on cue, didn't he?
He did. He was quiet most of the time, right?
Yeah. All righty. Take it easy.
Take care. Take care.
Right.
We hope you're enjoying all the speakers. We know that 6 or 7 speakers a day can be overwhelming with all the other things you have going on. If you want to be able to listen to all the speakers over and over again forever and get access to previous summit interviews as well as hundreds of dollars of sugar reduction bonuses, make sure that you click on the speaker package link to get lifetime access and make this the year you discover lasting sugar freedom success.